What's going on YouTube? My name is Amisbro, and for this video, this is the 24th episode of the anime review series. And tonight is also the first episode in which we are handling the Boys Love Month, which is on the channel. 3 BL series or Shonen Ai series, and 3 weeks. Tonight is Junjou Romantica, next week is Sekaiichi Hatsukoi, and the following week is Antique Bakery. The 4th week is actually vacant. But tonight we are handling Junjou Romantica, which is actually an interesting one, because it's not one specific series, it's actually 3. Yeah. It's literally a 3-in-1, and I'll explain how that works in a second. First off, the anime, as it stands right now, from the first 2 seasons, aired from April 10th, 2008 to December 27th. Was 24 episodes and an OVA. No, we did not watch the OVA. The manga has run from 2002 and is still ongoing, according to the wiki page here. Has 18 volumes, and it is published in English by Blue Manga. Alright, now, I mentioned that there are 3 stories involved, correct? Okay. The stories go like this. Junjou Romantica, Junjou Egoist, and Terrorist. Now, there are 3 couples involved, and they are as follows. We have, Akihiko Usami, or Usagi. I'll explain how confusing that is in a second. And Misaki Takahashi, they are part of Romantica. Yo Miyagi and Shinobu Takasuki is from Terrorist. This leaves Kamijo Haruki, or Haruki Kamijo, whichever way you want to look at, and Nawaki Kusama as the Egoist. So those are your 3 couples that you deal with throughout the course of the series. And it's interesting the way that's handled, because in the episodes there is sometimes crossover between the couples, between the different storylines. Not all the time, but there is times when you will see a character from, say, Terrorist go into Egoist, or Egoist into, say, Romantica. It will happen. Each season is 12 episodes long. So you could theoretically, and I did, watch this entire run over 4 days if you were to watch 6 episodes a day. Animation-wise, it's fine. That was handled by Studio Dean. Studio Dean, and for anybody has followed me, knows they did Vampire Knight, and they've also done 07 Ghost, one of our Crunchyroll reviews from when that series first started. I'm not going to really harp on or talk about the story too much for this reason. It's actually, I don't want to say it's hard to follow it, although it kind of is. But you have 3 stories that you're handling in one series. No, I'm not kidding. There's, like I said, 3. There's Romantica, Egoist, Terrorist. You would think, this is the way I would have done it, they would give each series equal time. They actually don't. The one that gets the bulk of the time is Romantica. That's fine. But as far as Egoist and Terrorist, Egoist gets probably the most run of the other two, and Terrorist just kind of there. In case you're wondering, the basic plot, I'll give you that much. Let's look at Romantica for a second. So in Romantica, we have Akihiko Usami, excuse me, and Misaki Takahashi, sorry. Well, Takahashi started just as a regular high school student, and he was trying to get into a college called, I believe it was called Mitsuhashi. He wanted to get in there, so he was trying to, bring his grades up. And he also wanted to get in there because his brother, who by the way is played by Kishu Taniyama, his brother, excuse me, is named Takahiro. Well, you may not know this, but Takahiro and Aki were kind of best friends, sort of lovers kind of thing. The very first episode, when Misaki goes into his apartment, he is caught off guard by the fact that Aki is just kind of sitting there with his brother pinned up against the wall. Yeah, they were kind of almost having a makeout session. And that sort of starts the ball rolling. The thing of it is in the first episode of Romantica, they literally have the story going about 100 miles an hour. It's literally almost like it's a time lapse. Just so that when we do episodes 2 and onward, with them anyway, we don't have to worry about, fumbling around trying to get the story going. We've already established the reason they went there, that he got into the college, which he did, and all sort of other things. But here's the question: what does Akihiro actually do? Well, Aki is actually a author, and he's a writer in general. One of the things he's actually very good at writing is boys' love stories. The thing of it is, his muses have apparently been his boyfriends. Not surprisingly, Misaki's brother was one of them. Well, because of the fact that Misaki was living with Aki now, he unfortunately became the, dare we say, unwanted muse of these stories. And that, my friends, is the basics of everything. Because you see, from there on, what we come to find out is Aki's a very possessive person. He does not want anybody else to be around Misaki ever. He's almost like his babysitter, even though in reality Aki can't do much around the house. He can't cook, he can't clean, he can't do anything apparently. His bedroom, people, wait, anybody wants to say about me? Okay, this guy, let's talk about his bedroom for a second. He has a toy train track that goes across the floor, a string banner that has different countries' flags on it, and stuffed animals all over the place. I mean, it looks like, and by the way, the dude's like in his 20s, she's like 28, and you know, it looks like a children's playroom. Legitimately. We also learn one other very interesting little factoid about him. Because this is a shonen/boys love series, they want to establish that fact. Well, they do. For the first season, mainly. Season 2, yeah, they kind of temper that, thank God, because, well, let's be honest. Did you want the entire story about them to be nothing but about what goes on in, you know? Anyway. What is interesting about their story is there are times when Masaki really has a hard time being around Aki, but at the same time he likes him, but he can't spit out the fact that he is in love with him because, well, they're both guys. Believe me when I tell you that the rest of his family ends up becoming very interested in this boy, and they want after him. By the end of the series, virtually everybody in the clan that's a male wants to date him. That's literally the way it ends up. I'm sorry. Anyway. Well, there's one female, but anywho, but she's like seen like one episode. It's, you know. Anyway. Then we get to Egoist. Well, Egoist deals with Hiroki, Komaji, and Nawaki Kusama. The deal with them is it's a bit more interesting because, okay, in every story there's an age gap. In this one, the age gap isn't really that big. It's like 4 years. And I guess Komajio wouldn't see himself being with a man. Whereas with, say, Aki, that's a given. Well, Nawaki ends up coming to Komajio's place, ends up, you know, living with him. And the idea was that he was going to stay with him and study. Well, their story ends up actually very interesting. It ends up interesting in a few ways. In the first season, they actually are living in a house that you and I probably would be staying at if we were moving to Japan or visiting Japan. And it's actually a very tiny one. I mean, tiny. Like, I have a bedroom that was about as big as that room. Not here, but in another house. But they were staying there. And part of their story ends up with Nawaki going to America to study abroad and then coming back home. Well, when he does this, apparently he pisses off Konjiro greatly because, you see, they were dating for a while. And then he just abruptly leaves and stuff happens. But it's actually that's a really good story. The thing is, it doesn't get as much time. And, somewhat surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there's not as many episodes that end with them doing the do, as I like to call it. The terrorist story is weird because it only gets one episode. It only gets, I think, like total 2 episodes. If there's more, then I missed them completely. But in Terrorist, we have Miyagi, who, by the way, is one of the professors that Komajio associates with in Egoist, and he ends up in a relationship, yet again, with a bigger age gap, with a young man named Shinobu. To give you his full name, Excuse me, where am I? I just had you, you motherfucker. Here you go. Shinobu Takasugi. I'm sorry. This is one of the, like I said, this is one of the harder ones because you literally have 3 different stories and 6 different and 6 people, well, 3 different couples to deal with. So it's trying to literally keep track of everybody. That story, for whatever reason, got the shortest run in the anime. Now, maybe that's because of the way it's wrote in the manga. Fine. If they're treated more as side stories, fine. Then this complaint's null and void. But it's hard. First off, it's hard sometimes to really get an emotional attachment to characters when you're constantly switching the story from one to the other to the other. That is a problem. It's also really hard to consistently develop characters when you limit the number of episodes they get. So, if we look at Terrorist, they maybe get 2 or 3 episodes total, right? Please tell me how the hell you're gonna care about Shinobu and Miyagi. Don't get me wrong, you end up doing it. But how the hell can you really get emote and fall in love with that couple? It's hard. Believe me. It's easier for Egoist, but at the same time, it's weird because Komojiro can act like such a prick to Nawaki. Like, legitimately. Like, you can tell in every sense that Nawaki loves Komojiro, but it's almost like a one-sided love. It's kind of like, in some respects, the way the story starts to play out, or the story was playing out for a while in Romantica, because, how do I explain this? You have Aki, who really does care and love Mizaki, but the other just doesn't. He feels funny about it because it's a guy. It's a guy that loves him, and it's an older guy too. Remember, by the time season 2 ends, Mizaki's like 19 years old. Meanwhile, Aki's like 20-something. He's like 28, 29 years old. So there's that age gap. Can you see why he'd be a little funny? I mean, it's not easy when you're dating an older person who's older than you, because what interests do you have, really? It's just one of those things. But I think in that story, this is just what I've gathered watching it. You have Aki, who really does love Mizaki to the point where he will not let anything bad happen to him. He even goes as far as trying to protect him from his own family, because either they want to take him from Aki, or they want to make sure that he doesn't go anywhere near him. There's a character who pops up later in season 2 named, I believe it's Azaki. And he really doesn't want, and this is clear, he really doesn't want Mizaki around Akihiko. Alright. Well, maybe we should let that kid actually make that decision. You get what I'm saying? And judging by the way that the season ends, that ain't what he gets. So, let's bottom line this. What do we think of Junjou Romantica right now as we sit here with the first 2 seasons wrapped up. I'm going to give this a recommendation. I'm going to give this a recommendation with this caveat though. You have to remember that in the first season, there's going to be some scenes you may not be comfortable with. And let me be clear, there's going to be people that will not be, and that's fine. But there's a lot of us that can look past that and see the story. If you can get through the first season and then go into season 2 and really start to, especially with Romantica, because that's the story they really focus on, if you can really start to understand and appreciate the story and the characters that they give you, you'll fall in love with it, I promise you. It's actually a really well done, well written story. And apparently, although I didn't see them, some of the characters that were involved in Romantica got a spin-off. That spin-off is a series we're going to be handling next week, beginning on Monday, with Sekaiichi Hatsukoi. So, stick around for that, and I will see you on next Thursday for that review. And, yeah. Hope y'all take care. Good night.